Hi everybody, Dan Illman and Matt Bernier, the DRFBets race of the day for Wednesday, October the 3rd. We're going to kick off the pick 6 at beautiful Belmont Park with race number 4, 6 furlongs on the inner turf. Nice entry-level allowance race, a race and a pick 6 wager that you can play with your own DRFBets account. Sign up at bets.drf.com, receive a 300% deposit match. Here's the field of fillies and mares 3 and up, again going 6 furlongs on the inner turf. You can access free formulator past performances for this race on the race of the day event page at drf.com. Download them. We're going to handicap this field in post position order, beginning with one half of this coupled entry, the number 1 Glossy. And Matt, Glossy really got good in her last 2 races. Why the layoff?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it numerous times. You don't just put good horses away. Usually they go away for a reason, and you can see she's got a pretty giant gap in the workout tab recently from early September to the middle of September. So clearly there have been some physical things. That was going to be my educated guess here as to why she's been gone. The problem I have with her, it's not so much that, you know what, she's been gone for a while. It's just as good as she's been as far as form is concerned, the figures just aren't there. I think she's going to need to run considerably faster, and she's facing the best horses she's ever faced.
The number 2, Tap Tap Taparoo. Both turf sprint tries for trainer Jimmy Toner have been good. Her most recent effort, a maiden race going 5.5 furlongs. I know she got a good trip over a yielding turf course, sort of that in-out trip under Manny Franco, who I believe is one of the most improved jockeys and just keeps improving race after race. This horse seems to be a filly with a ton of upside potential and tactical speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she's interesting, and I think you're going to get a little more than that 5-1 morning line. I think facing winners for the first time, some people will probably look at it and say a little bit too much too soon. At the same time, I look at that most recent start, and I know it was over yielding ground. I thought she was impressive that day. That figure fits in here really well. That tactical speed she brings to the game. I think she's one of the more intriguing sort of middle prices in this race.
Let's take a look at the Timeform U.S. pace projector for this 6 furlong dash. We've got the 7 and the 8 out there on the lead, and maybe in the catbird seat is the number 3 Violent Times, who is making the 3rd start of the form cycle, just like the 2 Tap Tap Taparoo. The difference is Violent Times has paired up Beyer tops in both of those races off the bench, her only 2 lifetime starts on turf, and while she did get a good pace to run at last time out, she had to come pretty wide and was just no match for that gate-to-wire chalk. I think she fits this race like a glove.
Agreed. You brought up the paired up Beyers. I think there's a scenario where you get the best race of her career. And also keep in mind, that run 2 starts back, she had some tactical speed. She didn't have to come from way out of it. She's versatile. I think she can adapt to whatever is thrown her way. To me, in many ways, she is the horse to beat in here. I know there's another horse that we'll talk about in a bit that's shorter on the morning line. I think Violent Times is a prime contender.
Ella Weasel, at number 4, has done some good things in her career. This is a veteran New York bred that is yet to beat Open Company. She got through her New York bred condition 2 starts back with an 84 Beyer speed figure, a figure that would put her in pretty good stead in this spot, but she just didn't fire against Violent Times in length last time out, and she got a good pace to rally into. She's the kind of mare that likes to nibble. Maybe we could sneak her into the bottom of single race exotics.
It's kind of the way that I'm looking at her. 3 of 25 lifetime, 9 times second or third. Look at that overall record at Belmont Park, 1 for 16, 7 minor awards. And you brought up the fact that she took on Open Company most recently. I think she fits better with obviously the New York breds, and against this kind of company, I think she's best used underneath.
The most prolific winner in this field is the number 5 First Appeal, 12-1 on the morning line, Jose Ortiz and Linda Rice. This is a 5-time winner who finished behind Violent Times in her most recent start. And we talked about the number 1 Glossy coming into this race off a layoff with a big gap in the work tab. Similar situation here. First Appeal hasn't run since August 11th, and there is a 25-day gap between her last 2 works.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you've got to be a little bit concerned about with a horse like this, with the exception of that 3-race stretch at Belmont, Aqueduct, Belmont at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, she doesn't really have races on her page that are all that fast or make her a major player in here. Now, look, if you told me you're going to get 12-1 on a Jose and Linda team, I think that's a very, very intriguing play as far as value is concerned. But even this was the kind of horse where I think you're probably best used underneath, especially with the running style. I think there's a scenario where if the pace doesn't heat up, this one may have a little bit too much to do late.
Somewhat concerning that even though she won her seasonal debut over course and trip, these Beyers have just been going the wrong way as of late. Mrs. Ramona G, you want to talk about a layoff. We haven't seen this 3-year-old filly since late February. The good news is Jeremiah Engelhardt does good work off layoffs, as we see from this formulator fact. Over the past 2 years, with older turf sprinters making their return off a 6-month layoff or greater, Jeremiah is winning at 36% and a $3.25 ROI. And I thought this filly had a tough trip against good company last time out.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing too, I mean, she's the kind of horse where she's so lightly raced. She's unexposed at this point. She's been gone for a significant amount of time. So I can understand anyone that's a little bit sort of leery going into a race like this. I kind of look at her and say the 2 times that she's been allowed to sprint on turf, to me, they're clearly her best races. And like you say, that most recent run, things didn't necessarily work out ideally. And she's faced a decent enough horse. We know March Express. She's no superstar, but she's a decent enough runner. I think if you want just totally the unexpected, the unknown in a spot like this, I think she fits in here. I think she's a little bit interesting.
According to Dave Grenning, she had a little bit of a foot problem, which necessitated that layoff. But you mentioned both turf sprints, including the career debut, which means she can run well fresh. And you mentioned March Express, the runner-up in that little stakes race last time out. She came back to run 3rd in a stake at Aqueduct with an 81 buyer as an early season 3-year-old filly. I thought this filly got shuffled back at a key point last time out, had to come all the way around, and going 5 furlongs at Gulfstream. If you have to stop for an instant, you are in big trouble. I agree with you. I think Mrs. Ramona G is interesting. The 7 and the 8 are going to try turf for the first time. The good news for them is they're both by Wildcat Air, whose progeny seem to run well sprinting on the turf. 11% winners with first-time turf runners. The 7, Richie's Little Wildcats Dam, won on the turf, and she has already foaled 1 turf winner.
And I think the other thing too, we've talked about it, there is a comparison between turf and synth that may not be apples to apples, but it's pretty darn close. And at least Richie's Little Wildcat has success over a synthetic racing surface already, so maybe that allays some fears. My concern with each one of these runners, and we'll talk about the 8 momentarily, I think they both have to go, and I think they're the ones, like the pace projector suggests, they could end up kind of cooking one another up.
Richie's Little Wildcat is a multiple stakes winner on dirt against fellow Illinois breds. She won that stakes race at Fairmount Park in June, but then was a vet scratch 3 weeks later at Arlington, shipped to Saratoga, was claimed by Gary Contessa, who's just having a tremendous summer and fall. We'll see what we get from Richie's Little Wildcat. As for Katoria, this horse has big early speed, another one by Wildcat Air, but this dam, who was unraced, has foaled 3 turf runners. None of them seem to handle the surface very well.
You do wonder if you get to a certain point, and it's not like she's been embarrassed in her races. She's 1 for 4, and she's been in the exact on 2 other occasions. But I do wonder if this is the time where you get and you have a horse like this who, okay, not a prolific winner just yet, but there is clearly ability. Do you just find out? You find out if she can handle the turf, and if she can't, okay, you can always go back to the main track. If she can handle the turf, the amount of options and opportunities just go up exponentially. I don't fault the connections for taking a chance. I don't know that it'll work, but I think it's an interesting spot.
The second half of the Claiborne Dill Schneider / Bill Mott owner-trainer coupled entry, along with Glossy, is the #1 length. And I thought length ran okay last time out, sort of 3 wide, chasing that pace. That pace was pretty solid, and the winner, the favorite, went gate to wire. And jockey Dylan Davis just dropped a whip at the quarter pole, and maybe that cost this filly a little bit of momentum. To me, it always takes her a lot of time to change leads in the stretch. She earned a buyer 2 starts back, though, that's solid. And if the 7 and 8 go, why can't she fall into a good trip?
No, I agree with you. I guess the tough thing for me with length, and I happen to like length in that most recent run, and I just, even with losing the whip, I just don't think she was ever really all that competitive in there. Now, if you told me that you're going to get a run more similar to what we saw at Saratoga, she certainly fits in here and she makes some sense. But just on the heels of that most recent effort, the first time against winners, against open company, and by the way, you see that Violent Times was well clear of her, I just have a hard time imagining she'll make up the distance between her and Violent Times, and then if there's some other salty horse that shows up, I just think she's got a lot of things going against her.
Libby's Tail is the #9, completes the body of the field. We have 3 MTOs that we hope not to see on Wednesday. While Libby's Tail is only 1 for 11 in her career and hasn't won a race since her debut back in July of 2016, she does have some back class. She was grade 1 placed as a 2-year-old on dirt, and I think if you just evaluate the quality of competition each of these ladies have faced in their most recent starts, Libby's Tail is actually taking a hidden class drop.
And that's ultimately how I ended up landing on her, spoiler alert, as far as picks are concerned. But I just kind of looked at it and said, I know we always talk about east going west, and usually there's an advantage. This might be that rare instance where the West Coast horse, for that short time coming back east, She faced Meal Ticket and Vexatious. They were both next out winners, and not just next out winners, but they are legitimate numbers, 92 and 89 Beyer speed figures. I understand anyone that looks at this filly and says, you're on a 10-race losing streak, and you got a little bit of nibble in you. Maybe you don't actually want to get the job done. I just also think the combination of getting with Jason Service and a turf sprint, I like the outside draw. I think there's a lot to like about Libby's Tale, perhaps other than the price. I think she comes down from that 5-2.
You mentioned Jason Service taking over the reins. Here's the formulator fact for Service. Over the past 3 years, older horses on turf making the first start after the trainer switched to Service, 25% winners and a $3.37 ROI. Matt's already given us his pick, but let's make the great reveal anyway. He's going with Libby's Tale. I liked Violent Times' last race. I know she might have been aided a little bit by a good pace, but the pace should be fair in here. She had to go wide last time out. I like the third off the layoff after pairing up Beyer Tops, and I love where she's placed on the Timeform US pace projector. So I'm going 3, 2, 9, and 1. Give me numbers.
Yeah, I'm going 9, 3, 2, and 1A. So we're both looking at it very similarly.
Should be a fun race to kick off the Pick 6. The Wednesday DRFBets Formulator Race of the Day. Bet it with a new DRFBets account. 300% deposit match only for DRFBets members when you sign up at bets.drf.com. Approximate post time for race number 4 at beautiful Belmont Park on Wednesday, 3:09 Eastern. Good luck.